Before you scroll, stop and ask yourself, who's leading your life right now? Because let me tell you something straight from heaven's blueprint. God doesn't follow your plan, he perfects his. And if you want this day, this life, to flow in divine power and kingdom purpose, then you've got to stop running and start following. This is not just another video. This is your appointment with the Almighty. Every single morning, heaven calls your name, but if you're not tuned in, you'll miss divine instructions trying to reach you through the noise. Welcome to Myron Golden Track, where we don't just motivate, we align destinies with kingdom design. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe, like, and drop a comment below that says, "Lead me, Lord," if you're ready to stop striving and start walking in divine alignment. Share this with someone you love. And if you're ready to go deeper, join our exclusive membership to walk in wisdom, wealth, and the word every single day. Because when the Good Shepherd leads, you don't chase peace, you walk in it. You don't beg for favor, you carry it. You don't hustle for purpose, you wake up in it. Let's pray and let God take the lead. God doesn't follow your plan, he perfects his. We often come to God with a blueprint, a list, a schedule, a plan that we believe is best. We pray not because we want his will, but because we want his power to rubber stamp our will. But the kingdom doesn't operate like that. God is not obligated to endorse your strategy. He is committed to fulfilling his purpose. That's why the most dangerous position a believer can hold is assuming that their plan, no matter how noble, automatically aligns with heaven's design. God is not a consultant in your life. He is the author and the finisher. He is not waiting for your instruction. He is calling for your obedience. And when you understand that, you stop praying prayers that try to convince God to get on board with your timeline. Instead, you start praying prayers like, "Lord, not my will, but yours be done." Because true faith is not revealed when everything goes your way. True faith shows up when your plan dies, but you still trust that his plan is better. Think about Abraham. God gave him a promise, but not the process. Abraham tried to help God fulfill the vision through human means and birthed Ishmael. But God didn't change the plan. He waited until Abraham's strength ran out so his glory could begin. That's the principle. God waits for the end of your plan so he can perfect his. Many people are frustrated not because God didn't show up, but because he didn't show up the way they expected. You had a deadline, he had a divine appointment. You had a method, he had a miracle. God is not bound by your systems or logic. His ways are higher, his thoughts are deeper, and his strategy often looks like stillness while the world rushes ahead. You might be asking, why isn't it happening yet? Because it's not supposed to happen through your effort. It's supposed to happen through his execution. You might have crafted a 5-year plan, but God is setting up a legacy that stretches through eternity. Your goals may be good, but his are glorious. And here's the real test. Will you still worship when your plan falls apart? Will you still trust when he rewrites the script in the middle of the act? Will you still believe when the door you knocked on doesn't open because he's leading you to a door you never saw? It's not that planning is wrong. Planning is wise, but it's dangerous to assume that planning equals sovereignty. Only God sees the end from the beginning. So don't cling to your plan, cling to his presence. He's not here to follow you. He's calling you to follow him, because your plan can bring progress, but only his plan brings purpose. Your plan may get you a position, but his plan gives you power. When you finally surrender your agenda, that's when you make space for alignment. And alignment is better than ambition. Alignment positions you for supernatural acceleration, because when you walk in his will, you walk under his authority. So this morning, ask yourself, are you inviting God into your plan, or are you stepping into his? Because he didn't promise to bless what you build. He promised to bless what he commands. He's not moved by how strategic your ideas are. He's moved by your willingness to submit. Your breakthrough is not waiting at the end of your effort. It's unlocked at the moment of your surrender. Still waters are not a place, they're a position of trust. Psalm 23 says, he leads me beside still waters. We read that and picture a calm lake, a quiet meadow, birds chirping, and peace all around. But still waters are not simply a physical location. They're a spiritual condition. You can be in the middle of noise, pressure, deadlines, and spiritual warfare and still be beside still waters, because stillness doesn't come from your surroundings. Stillness flows from your surrender. The world says, fix everything first, then you'll feel peace. But the kingdom says, rest in me first, and I'll fix everything. Still waters are not a vacation spot. They're a mindset. They are a trust posture. They are a declaration that even if the storm is outside, there is no storm inside. Not because life is perfect, but because your shepherd is present. Still waters mean your soul has learned to stop striving. It's not lazy. It's not careless. It's deeply rooted in the knowledge that God's got it handled. You're not running around trying to fix what only God can fix. You're not exhausting yourself trying to control what only He controls. You're letting go. You're trusting. You're resting. And that rest is revelation. That stillness says to heaven and to hell, my trust is not in the outcome. My trust is in the one who owns the outcome. Still waters don't mean the journey is easy. It means you're no longer trying to carry the weight. It means you've given up the illusion of control. It means you understand that peace is not the absence of problems, it's the presence of a person. You don't need a peaceful situation when you have the Prince of Peace inside you. Remember, Jesus slept through a storm while his disciples panicked. The water was crashing, the boat was shaking, but the Son of God was at rest. Why? Because he knew the Father was still in control. That's what still waters look like. It's when you stop letting the storm outside dictate the peace inside. It's when you say, no matter what's happening around me, it won't shake the trust that's rooted within me. You don't have to wait for things to settle to experience stillness. God can give you still waters in the middle of a job loss. He can give you still waters while your family's in chaos. He can give you still waters while the bills are due. Because the stillness of God is not passive, it's powerful. It is a stillness that silences fear. It is a stillness that confuses the enemy. It is a stillness that makes room for faith to speak louder than facts. The shepherd leads you to still waters, but you must be willing to follow him through the valley first. Some people want still waters without surrender. They want peace without obedience. But you can't experience divine rest until you're under divine authority. Stillness isn't just a feeling, it's a fruit that grows when trust is planted. If you keep looking for peace in external places, you'll always be chasing and never arriving. But when you shift your expectation from the world to the word, from your strength to his sovereignty, from your logic to his leading, you'll find yourself beside still waters even when you're walking through the fire. Because still waters are not about what's happening around you, they're about what's anchored within you. The shepherd never leads without provision in mind. When God leads, he provides. He does not call his people into dry places without already preparing streams in the desert. He does not lead into the wilderness without already ordaining manna from heaven. The shepherd's leadership is always connected to provision, but not always the way we imagine it. We expect provision to be convenience, but God's provision is often revealed through obedience. And the only way to unlock that provision is by trusting that when the shepherd says move, he has already made the way. The problem with many believers is they want the provision before they follow. But the kingdom doesn't work like that. The provision is in the place of obedience. When Abraham climbed Mount Moriah with Isaac, there was no ram in sight. But the moment he obeyed, the moment he stretched out his hand in full surrender, the provision spoke. God said, now I know you fear me. And at that exact moment, a ram was caught in the thicket. The provision had been there, but it wasn't revealed until the obedience was real. So when the shepherd leads you, don't ask, how will I make it? Ask, what has he already prepared for me there? Because his instruction always contains provision. It may not look like abundance at first. It may look like a small jar of oil or a handful of flour, but when God is in it, little becomes limitless. When you trust him, the oil flows until every vessel is filled. When you obey him, 5 loaves and 2 fish feed thousands. It's never about the size of your resource. It's about the source of your trust. God will never guide you where his grace can't keep you. If he tells you to step, he's already ordered the provision. He's not improvising your life. He's not reacting to your circumstances. He's already factored in every need. That's why he's the shepherd, because he goes ahead. He doesn't walk beside trying to figure it out with you. He's ahead of you, preparing the field, clearing the danger, placing the water, and planting the provision in advance. That's the character of God. He prepared the garden before he placed Adam in it. He set the table before he invited the guest. He built the ark before the first drop of rain fell. He sent provision before the problem appeared. That's why worry is wasted energy, because if the shepherd is leading you, then he's already provided for you. But don't confuse the presence of challenges with the absence of provision. Sometimes the provision is disguised in the challenge. David didn't see provision when he looked at Goliath, but defeating that giant unlocked a throne. Joseph didn't see provision in the pit or the prison, but God used that very route to elevate him into Pharaoh's palace. Provision is not always comfortable. Sometimes provision is hidden inside pressure, because pressure reveals what's been planted in faith. God is a provider, but he's also a tester, not to destroy your faith, but to develop it. The test is whether you'll keep walking even when you don't see the water. Will you still follow when it looks dry? Will you keep moving when it feels uncertain? Because the shepherd doesn't need your understanding. He needs your obedience. He's not asking for your strategy. He's asking for your surrender. Provision isn't just money or material things. Provision is peace in chaos. Provision is clarity in confusion. Provision is grace to stand when the storm is raging. Provision is wisdom when the world has no answers. Provision is strength to wait when everything in you wants to rush. Provision is divine connections, strategic alignments, favor with people you didn't even know were watching. Provision comes in many forms, and when the shepherd leads, lack has no legal right to stay. When you follow the shepherd, you don't chase it. Provision chases you, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. That's not wishful thinking. That's covenant promise. God is not waiting for you to figure it out. He's waiting for you to follow. Because when he leads, he provides in a way that not only meets your needs, but magnifies his glory. Surrender is the start of supernatural strategy. The kingdom of God does not operate on human logic. The principles of heaven often contradict the practices of earth. The world says, fight for control. The kingdom says, release it. The world says, take action. The kingdom says, bow in surrender first. Because every divine strategy starts not with planning, not with positioning, not with power plays, but with surrender. When you lay it down before God, that's when he picks it up and breathes on it with favor. God is not looking for the smartest. He's not impressed by the strongest. He doesn't need the most resourced or the most connected. What he's after is the most surrendered. That's the person he can trust with influence. That's the person he can give vision to. That's the person he can raise up, not to build their own name, but to exalt his name through their life. Surrender is not weakness. In the kingdom, surrender is strength. Surrender is not passive, it's prophetic. When you surrender, you're making a declaration. I trust that God's plan is better than mine. And that level of trust is what unlocks the strategy of heaven. Because strategy without surrender becomes manipulation. But when your heart is surrendered, your steps are ordered. Look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. The Son of God, the Word made flesh, stood at the edge of his greatest assignment. And And what did he say? Not my will, but yours be done. That wasn't resignation. That was activation. That surrender triggered the most powerful move of God in human history, the crucifixion and resurrection. Because supernatural strategy begins at the altar of submission. You don't need another strategy session. You need a surrender session. You need to get on your knees and ask, Lord, what do you want to do with this business, with this relationship, with this next step? Because once you surrender it, he can start shaping it. As long as you're holding it in your own hand, you're limiting what heaven can do. But once you place it in his hands, the impossible becomes inevitable. Surrender opens your ears to instruction. Surrender clears your heart of pride. Surrender silences your ego so you can hear his whisper. And in that stillness, God downloads divine blueprints. He gives ideas that can't be explained by education. He opens doors that can't be opened through networking. He releases strategies that confound the wise and elevate the humble. But surrender is not one moment. Surrender is a lifestyle. You don't just surrender your Sunday. You surrender your Monday through Saturday. You surrender your plans, your platform, your preferences, your pace. Because every day that you wake up surrendered, you wake up under divine strategy. Sometimes surrender looks like waiting when everything in you wants to rush. Sometimes surrender looks like walking away when your flesh wants to fight. Sometimes surrender means saying no to a good opportunity because God has a greater one you haven't seen yet. Surrender doesn't always feel spiritual. Sometimes it feels like loss. But in the kingdom, what looks like losing to man often looks like winning to God. You don't get supernatural results with flesh-driven decisions. You get supernatural results by dying to self, picking up your cross daily and saying, lead me, Lord. That's where the strategy is born. That's where heaven downloads vision that shapes generation. That's where ideas are conceived that transform families, businesses, and entire cities. Every revival started with surrender. Every breakthrough started with surrender. Every miracle, every open door, every divine encounter, all of it begins when a child of God says, I'm done leading myself. Father, take the lead. Because the moment you surrender, heaven begins to move in a way that no earthly system can match. Peace is not the absence of problems, it's the presence of God. The mistake many believers make is waiting for everything to be perfect before they claim peace. They wait until the bills are paid, until the diagnosis is reversed, until every relationship is healed, until every door is open. But that is not kingdom peace. That is circumstantial comfort, and comfort can't be trusted to sustain your spirit when the warfare intensifies. Peace, real peace, the kind that passes all understanding, does not depend on external conditions. It is rooted in the internal presence of a sovereign God who never leaves, never changes, and never loses control. You can be surrounded by conflict and still carry peace. You can be walking through fire and still stand firm. You can be rejected, misunderstood, attacked, delayed, even disappointed, and still have a peace that does not bend to the storm. Because peace is not the product of an easy life. It's the product of a yielded spirit. When the presence of God fills a person, it doesn't remove the challenges. It overrides them. It insulates your mind. It steadies your emotions. It silences panic before panic can speak. That's why Jesus could sleep in the boat during the storm, not because the wind wasn't real, but because his peace was stronger than the wind. And that's the same peace he gives to those who follow him. A peace that anchors, a peace that calms, a peace that tells fear, you don't belong here. A peace that whispers truth in the middle of the devil's lies. But to walk in that kind of peace, you have to stop treating peace like a feeling and start treating it like a person. Jesus is peace. The Prince of Peace doesn't just give you something, he gives you himself. And when he abides in you, the storm loses its power over you. This is why the word says, let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Rule, not visit, not occasionally pass through. Rule, as in take authority, as in govern your decisions, as in guide your responses. Peace should have a throne in your life. Peace should be the voice you follow before you act, before you speak, before you react. If peace doesn't rule, then emotions will. If peace doesn't rule, then pressure will. But when peace rules, you respond from victory, not from fear. Peace is not passive, it is power. When you walk in peace, you walk in dominion over the chaos the enemy tries to bring. That's why Satan attacks your peace first. He knows he can't take your salvation, so he tries to disturb your position. He tries to shift your focus from God to the storm, from faith to fear, from promise to pressure. Because if he can steal your peace, he can sabotage your power. But peace is guarded by presence. You don't protect peace by isolating yourself from the world. You protect it by saturating yourself in the Word. You protect peace through worship, through prayer, through fasting, through communion with the Father. The presence of God is the breeding ground of unshakable peace. You cannot entertain chaos for 6 days a week and expect to experience heaven's peace on day 7. Peace is cultivated, peace is pursued, peace is chosen. Peace is what allows you to rest even when the answer hasn't come yet. It allows you to worship while the report is still negative. It allows you to say, even if he doesn't move how I expect, I still trust him. That is mature peace. That is kingdom level trust. Because when you know the character of God, you realize peace doesn't come from knowing the outcome. Peace comes from knowing him. And peace is what the world is desperate for. People are running to everything: success, relationships, entertainment, distractions, to feel peace. But the peace they find there is temporary. It fades, it fluctuates. It depends on performance and circumstances. But kingdom peace is consistent. It's eternal. It's anchored in a God who changes not, fails not, and abandons no one who calls on his name. God's voice doesn't compete, it commands. God is not in the business of shouting over your distractions. He is not trying to outshout your phone notifications, your social media feed, your anxious thoughts, or the opinions of people around you. His voice is not in a competition. His voice commands. And only those who have ears to hear will hear what the Spirit is saying, because God speaks to those who make space to listen. The problem is not that God is silent. The problem is we're too noisy. We're so full of external stimulation and internal confusion that we can't distinguish divine instruction. But the voice of God doesn't beg for your attention. It doesn't chase after your focus. It waits for a surrendered posture. That's why Scripture says, be still and know, not be busy and hope. Be still. Because stillness is the language of sensitivity. When your soul is still, your spirit can finally listen. God doesn't speak to entertain, he speaks to direct. When he speaks, things shift, heaven moves. Angels respond, demons flee, creation obeys. And that same voice that spoke the world into existence wants to lead your life. That same voice that calmed the sea, called Lazarus from the grave, and tore the veil in the temple is trying to speak purpose into your Monday morning. But you won't hear that voice if you're addicted to noise. You won't recognize that whisper if your soul is tuned to chaos. You must tune in. God's voice brings clarity. It brings conviction. It brings confidence. It doesn't confuse. It doesn't condemn. It doesn't create anxiety. If what you're hearing causes panic, that's not the shepherd, that's the stranger. And the word says, his sheep know his voice, and a stranger they will not follow. But the only way to recognize his voice is to spend time with him. His voice becomes clear the more walk in step with him. God speaks in many ways through his word, through his spirit, through his people, through circumstances, but he never contradicts himself. If you want to hear him, start by silencing everything that's not him. Start by detoxing your soul from distraction. Start by positioning your heart in a place where obedience is the response, not just curiosity. God's voice carries weight. When he speaks, it marks your spirit. It doesn't always come with goosebumps. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's corrective. Sometimes it challenges your comfort. But it always aligns with truth, always reveals his character, and always leads you closer to the center of his will. God doesn't speak to confuse you. He speaks to guide you. And his voice is not a suggestion, it is a command. When he says go, you go. When he says wait, you wait. When he says trust, you trust. And when you walk in step with that voice, you walk in power, you walk in peace, you walk in divine purpose. He is not trying to outshout the culture. He's waiting for you to outsilence the culture. He's not competing with Netflix or TikTok or the opinions of friends. He's waiting for someone who says, "Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening," because the voice of God will never chase a divided heart. It will only lead a surrendered one. Delay is not denial. It's divine direction. In the kingdom of God, timing is not based on urgency, but on accuracy. We often confuse delay with rejection, assuming that if something doesn't happen when we expect, then maybe it's not meant to be. But delay in the hands of God is not a denial. It's divine direction. And so, delay in the hands of God is not a denial, it's divine direction. It's not the absence of movement, it's preparation for greater movement. God is not in a rush to please your impatience. He's committed to building your character before he releases your calling. He's not just preparing the blessing for you, he's preparing you for the blessing. When God delays a thing, it's because he's developing something inside of you that can sustain the weight of what he's about to release. Sometimes you're praying for an open door, but your mindset isn't ready to walk through it. Sometimes you're asking for influence, but your integrity needs to be tested first. Sometimes you're seeking elevation, but your endurance hasn't been built yet. The delay is not a punishment, it's a pause that protects you from arriving too soon and breaking under the very thing you were meant to carry with grace. Moses waited 40 years before he stepped into his assignment. David was anointed as king, but had to run for his life before he sat on the throne. Joseph had a dream, but was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned before the palace. Delay was woven into every part of their destiny, not because God was absent, but because he was orchestrating something greater than they could see. What looks like a setback in the natural is often a setup in the spirit. And what looks like silence is often strategic shaping behind the scenes. When God delays, he's also exposing motives. He's revealing whether you love the promise more than the promiser. He's showing you if you'll stay faithful when the doors don't open. If you'll keep praying when the answer hasn't come. If you'll keep trusting when your understanding runs dry. The delay is not working against you, it's working in you. It's building spiritual muscle. It's deepening your roots. It's positioning you to receive what you're not yet ready to carry. The reason many people miss their moment is because they quit in the delay. They walk away from the process because they interpret waiting as wasted time. But in the kingdom, waiting is not passive, it's productive. Waiting is warfare. Waiting is worship. Waiting is obedience in motion. Every moment of delay is an opportunity to align deeper with the heart of God, to refine your focus, to purge your pride, and to build unshakable trust. So when the delay stretches longer than expected, don't default to doubt. Press into discernment. Ask the Lord, what are you forming in me right now? What are you removing that I don't need for the next level? What are you sharpening so that when the door opens, I won't just walk in, I'll thrive in it? Because when he finally moves, he moves suddenly. But those sudden moves are always the result of strategic delay. Where God leads, favor follows. Favor is not random, it's not accidental, it is intentional, and it is territorial. It does not follow people who simply believe in God, it follows those who follow God. Where he leads, favor follows, because favor is attracted to obedience. Favor shows up when you're in alignment. It's not about personality, popularity, or pedigree. It's about position. And when you walk in the path he's ordained, you don't have to chase blessings. Blessings start chasing you. This is the kingdom dynamic that separates natural success from supernatural increase. You can work hard, hustle smart, and get ahead by worldly standards. But favor is what causes doors to open that no man can shut. Favor is what brings opportunities you didn't apply for, relationships you didn't expect, resources you didn't earn, and breakthroughs you couldn't manufacture. Favor does what effort alone cannot accomplish, but it only flows where God is leading. Favor is not a license to skip process. It is God's endorsement on the process. It shows up when you walk in your assignment, not your ambition. Too many people are asking God for favor while walking in directions he never called them to. Favor doesn't rest on rebellion. It doesn't cover pride. It doesn't follow convenience. It rests where there is trust, submission, and divine obedience. When God led Israel through the wilderness, his cloud covered them, his fire guided them, his provision fed them. That was favor, but it only followed his lead. Favor is more than financial gain. It's more than public recognition. It's divine acceleration that gets more done in 5 minutes of God's plan than 5 years of your striving. It's wisdom that unlocks doors. It's protection from traps you never saw. It's guidance that directs your steps in unfamiliar places. Favor is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like closed doors that save you. Sometimes it looks like delays that protect you. Sometimes it looks like unexpected reroutes that shield you from danger. Favor is the fingerprint of God that shows up wherever you follow his voice. But favor also attracts resistance. When you walk in divine favor, the enemy takes notice. You become a target not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're walking in something right. Favor brings responsibility. It demands humility. It requires that you keep your eyes fixed on the one who gave it, not on the fruit it produces. Because favor can elevate you in front of people, but only faithfulness can keep you there. That's why you must never chase favor. You chase faithfulness. You chase his presence. You chase his word. You chase his instruction. And as you walk in step with him, favor becomes your companion. It goes before you. It opens rooms you're not qualified for. It positions you where no network can place you. It surrounds you like a shield. And it confirms to everyone around you that God is with you. Every morning is a meeting place with your maker. When you open your eyes each morning, heaven has already scheduled an appointment. God is not just interested in your big decisions, your Sunday praise, or your crisis prayers. He desires fellowship daily. He desires to speak to you, guide you, strengthen you, and renew your mind before you ever step into the demands of the day. Every morning carries divine instruction, supernatural alignment, and spiritual preparation. The mistake many people make is rushing into their agenda without receiving their assignment. They chase after their to-do list without consulting the one who wrote their destiny. But those who pause in his presence first walk through the day with clarity and confidence that no circumstance can shake. God doesn't just want to visit you on occasion. He wants to dwell with you. And the morning is sacred ground for that connection. Before the opinions of others, before the weight of decisions, before the pressure of responsibilities, That's when your spirit is most ready to receive. The morning is not just a routine, it's a revelation. It's where your priorities are recalibrated, your peace is restored, and your purpose is reawakened. And every time you choose the meeting, you choose alignment, you choose covering, you choose kingdom over chaos. It doesn't have to be long, it just has to be real. It has to be intentional. It has to be proactive, and most of all, it has to be intentional, because when you meet with your maker, you're reminded of who you are, whose you are, and why you're here. When you let God lead, you stop chasing what's already yours. So many people are exhausted, striving for success, begging for love, running after opportunities, hustling for significance. But when God leads your life, you realize the things you're chasing are already yours in Him. You stop striving and start receiving. You stop performing and start possessing. Because what God has promised is not achieved through force, it's received through faith and obedience. You don't have to manipulate your way into purpose. You don't have to compete for attention or prove your worth. You don't have to force open doors when the King has already given you keys. Letting God lead means trusting that He has already gone before you and secured everything needed for your assignment. When you walk in His timing, His pace, and His will, you walk into divine appointments, not desperate pursuits. You realize you're not behind, you're in rhythm. You're not overlooked, you're hidden for the right moment. You're not missing out, you're being positioned for manifestation. God never requires you to hustle for what He has already placed in your inheritance. When He leads, He provides. When He leads, He multiplies. When He leads, everything you once chased begins to find you. Now you understand. God is not waiting on you to figure life out. He's waiting for you to follow. He doesn't move by your pressure. He moves by your surrender. This whole journey, it's not about rushing. It's about resting in alignment. Still waters aren't about quiet circumstances. They're about a quiet soul. Delay isn't God saying no. It's God saying not yet, because I'm growing you for something bigger. He's not guiding you to a place. He's shaping you into a person who can carry the weight of glory without breaking under it. When God leads, He provides. When God speaks, He commands. When you meet with Him in the morning, you walk in daily victory, not just Sunday emotion. And when you finally let go of chasing what was never yours to begin with, you'll realize everything you were looking for is already inside the path God laid out for you. This is not just a prayer, it's a positioning for power. This is not a ritual, it's a reset for dominion. And from this moment forward, if you let Him lead, you won't have to chase anything again. If this word stirred your spirit and realigned your focus, then don't keep it to yourself. This is Myron Golden Track, where you get fed, fueled, and focused. Like the video to let heaven know you're serious. Drop a comment that says, "Lead me, Lord," if this word was for you. Subscribe and share it with someone who's been chasing when they should be trusting. And if you're ready to go from motivation to manifestation, join our membership today, and let's walk this thing out in bold faith, divine strategy, and kingdom dominion. Because when you let God lead, you stop chasing what's already yours. Stay blessed always.